And so I asked Melis about that. I said, how do you expect us to work with you if you're an Albanian Marxist? And he said, we just called ourselves Albanian Marxists because Albanians refused to accept the control of the Soviet Union. And we also refused to accept control of Soviet Union or anybody else. So we were just trying to show that we were independent. We're not really like the Albanians. This was his explanation. I said, that's fine. We accept that.
Were you convinced?
No. I mean, considering that their whole ideology, we knew they were confirmed Marxists. So we were not surprised when they implemented Marxist policies when they took power. Saw that it was quite clear that he was going to impose the same type of authoritarian regime that Ethiopia has always had.
The Melis Zenawi dictatorship has gotten worse and worse. It has, in fact, committed genocidal massacres in other parts of Ethiopia. One of them, for example, in Gambela province in 2003, in which at least 1,000 people were massacred. And we also know of massacres in Oromia, against Amharas. There was the massacre after the 2005 election. I mean, it's a dictatorship that is getting more and more into the mode of genocidal killing. So I think there is a real danger here, and that it is going to require a movement to change things in Ethiopia. Now, I personally must say, I believe that a violent movement will be counterproductive, because I think it would very much bring down the kind of genocide that we have seen in Darfur.
I think if you look at Melis Zenawi's record, you'll see that he's on a par with Kim Jong-il of North Korea. He's worse than Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. He's in the same league as Slobodan Milosevic or Omar al-Bashir in Sudan. And would any of those people be recognized and even welcomed into the councils in Copenhagen? I don't think so. So the question is, why would Melis Zenawi be, again, not just recognized, but welcomed with open arms?
No, this is not a beauty contest. Running a country is not a beauty contest. We have to think what he did to his people.
We are not talking about how beautiful he was.
No, it's not that.
We are rather
but you are talking about who adores him.
We're talking
if
about
Mrs. Clinton adores him, it doesn't mean Ethiopian people adore him. That is a big reservation I have to put to you. You've been.
What about all those people that we see in Addis Ababa?
It was a stage-managed show.
I hope you are not suggesting that this man, who was in power for 21 good years, did not have supporters.
You know what kind of government he's leading? He's an ethnicist federal leader. He is actually promoting an ethnic federation in Ethiopia. And most of his government is dominated by his clan.
ኖርዝ ኮሪያን አይታችኋል። ኪም ኢል ሱንግ ታውቋቸዋላችሁ፣ የመጀመሪያው የኖርዝ ኮሪያ ፕሬዚዳንት። ኪም ኢል ሱንግ ከሞተ ፀሐይ ይጨልማል ብለው ያምኑ ነበር። በኋላ ለልጃቸው ሰጡት፣ ለማን ሱንግ ነበር። አሁን ሌላ ሱንግ መጥቷል፣ ደግሞ ሶስተኛ። የኪም ኢል ሱንግ ልጅ ሲሞት አይታችኋል። የኮሪያ ህዝብ እንዴት እንዳለቀሰ አይታችኋል። ለመጀመሪያ ጊዜ በዓለም ታሪክ በዩኒፎርም የተለቀሰበት ሀገር ነው። አንድ አይነት ለቅሶ በፓርቲ ነው የምትታዘዙት። ኞሽ ፓርቲ ነው የሚያዘው። እኛም ይፈቀድልናል እኮ ልክ እንደ ኖርዝ ኮሪያ አያድርስና አቶ መለስ ቢሞቱ የሰይጣን ጆሮ አይስማና። ለቅሷችንን አስቡት።
of government he's leading, he's an ethnicist federal leader. He is actually promoting an ethnic federation in Ethiopia. And most of his government is dominated by his clan. The Adwa group, which you just mentioned time ago.
Yes, much more than 5%
No, he has, all the other bodies have been grafted from the prisons in Eritrea and become heads of each unit that he has developed. And most of his ministers are in fact running it.
Ethiopia. You could talk about Kenya, you could talk about Uganda, you could talk about Rwanda, we could talk about a lot of countries on the continent.
Well, that doesn't make it right in Ethiopia in any case.
Nor does it make it right anywhere.
Anywhere. So, why press this issue? All dictators tend to bring their own clans and their own sectors into power, and that's why they perpetuate themselves.
The negative things that he did, I think, were very, very profound. First of all, he instituted essentially a one ethnic group dominated political system. Tigrayans only make up 6% of the Ethiopian population, and yet Tigrayans were either the governors or behind the governors of every province in Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian military was dominated by Tigrayans. So you had essentially a minority-run regime. Over the long run, that sort of regime is one of our most dangerous warning signs for genocide. You saw it in many other places, for instance, in Saddam Hussein's Iraq. And in fact, they did commit genocide. When
Syria as well.
Yeah, in Syria you have the same thing. The Alawite minority is controlling a country that is majority Sunni Muslim. And so they're committing genocide, genocidal massacres at least, in which the Alawite militias are killing whole groups, whole villages of Sunni Muslims. Well, that's what they did in Gambela province on December 13th, 2000.
ህዝብ ዛሬ የትም አፍሪካ ሀገር ውስጥ በዘር ያልተከፋፈለ ከየትም አፍሪካ ሀገር ውስጥ ሲወዳደር በዘር የተከፋፈለች ኢትዮጵያ ነች። ኢትዮጵያ ነበረች በዘር ያለ መከፋፈል ያለባት ኢትዮጵያ ነበረች። በታሪኩ ያየን እንደሆነ ሁላችንም ኦሮሞም፣ ጉራጌውም፣ አማራውም፣ ትግሬውም ሁሉም ከዛ አቅጣጫ መተን እንደ አንድ ኢትዮጵያዊ ሆነን ትልልቅ ድሎች ተጎናጽፈን ትልልቅ ጦርነቶች አሸንፈን ስልጣኔ መስርተን የኖርነው ሁላችን አብረን ሰርተን ነበር። ግን በዛ በታሪካችን ውስጥ አንዱን የመጨቆን አንዱን የመንቀፍ ታሪክ ቢኖረንም ግን ያንን ሁሉ ተቻችለን ግን በአንድ ኢትዮጵያዊነት ብዙ ድል ተጎናጽፈን የኖርን ህዝብ ነበር። ዛሬ ነው ተከፋፍለን ያለው። ዛሬ እኔም በልጅነቴም አላቅም ካደኩም በኋላ አላቅም። ሰው መጀመሪያ የሚጠየቀው ዘሩ ሆነ የሚጠየቀው ምከድ የመጣው ነው። ይሄንን ማናቀው ታሪክ ነው። አሁን ይሄ ታሪክ ይሄ መርዝ ነው ለማለት ነው። በሌላው አፍሪካ ሀገር አሁን ደቡብ አፍሪካ ሲከድ ደቡብ አፍሪካ ጥቁሩ፣ ነጩ፣ ክልሱ፣ ህንዱ አራቱም ብሔሮች የተለያዩ ሰዎች ከአፓርታይድ ወጥተው ሲናናቁ የነበሩ ሰዎች አሁን አንድ ሀገር ለመመስረት ጥረት እያደረጉ ናቸው። እና ሁሉም በክልል አልተከለሉም። የነጭ ሰፈር በአፓርታይድ ጊዜ የነበረ ነው። አሁን ግን እንደዛ ያለ ነገር የለም። እና ሳይከፋፈሉ አንድ ሀገር ለመመስረት እየሞከሩ ናቸው። ታንዛኒያን ነው ወሰድ ሟሊሙ ኔሬር ትልቅ ቅርስ የተውት ለአፍሪካ ሀገር ትልቅ ቅርስ የተውት ለታንዛኒያ ምንድነው ህዝቡን አንድ አደረጉት። ዛሬ ዘር የሚባል ነገር ታንዛኒያ ውስጥ የለም። ቋንቋቸው የተለያየ አለ ግን ሁሉም መጀመሪያ ታንዛኒያዊ ነኝ የሚለው። ኬንያ ብንወስድም ይሞክራል ሰው በተቻለ መጠን መጀመሪያ ኬንያዊነት በሌላው በሙሉ አፍሪካ ሀገር ብንሄድ ጥረቱ ምንድነው? ችግሮች ቢኖርም ጥረቱ ምንድነው? አንድ ሀገር ለማድረግ አንድ ህዝብ ለማድረግ ነው። ግን ይሄ መንግስት ግን ሲነሳ መጀመሪያ በመከፋፈል ዓላማ ነው የተነሳው። መጀመሪያ የመገንጠል መብት ሰጠ በህገ መንግስቱ። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ክልል ከፋፍሎ ለመገንጠልና ህዝቡ ራሱ ተከፋፍሎ ለመኖር እንዲችል ሁኔታውን አመቻቸ። በአስተዳደር ህጎች ውስጥም በአስተዳደር ህግም በዛው መሰረት እንዲሆን አደረገ። ስለዚህ አመሰራረቱ ራሱ አመጀማመሩ ራሱ የወያኔ በዘር የመከፋፈልና የተወሰኑ ዘሮችን ጨቁኖ ያንድ ዘርን የበላይነት ነው። ይሄ ደግሞ ላነጋገር አይደለም በተግባር የሚታይ እኮ ነው። እያንዳንዱ ሰው ይሄድ ዛሬ እያንዳንዱ ቢሮ ይሄዱ እያንዳንዱ መስሪያ ቤት ይሄዱ በጉልህ የሚታይ ነገር እኮ ነው።
When you look at it,
is being rewarded by the big powers, because in his own country is killing everybody, is putting everybody into opposition to prison by having him representing the rest of Africa to those kind of big meetings. That's the reward for it.
I think it's widely recognized that Africa, of all the countries and all the continents in the world, would be one of the most, if not the most, affected by global warming. And to a large degree, that as a result of unfair policies that puts them at a great disadvantage in many ways. He represents 52 countries out of the 190 countries that will be represented there. He's already threatened to walk out of the talks if his demands aren't met on behalf of Africa. They're seeking a lot of money from the developed countries in compensation for global warming damage that's occurring in those countries. There's no way that the other countries can get good representation from Meles Zenawi, because he really doesn't care even about his own country. He cares about staying in power himself at whatever cost.
This is the same guy who killed more than 426 Anuak people, my own people, in Gambela in one day. This is in 2003. So we call it genocide. The world knows about it. All the European Union, they talk about it, but yet they still keep rewarding these guys.
Meles Zenawi just under no circumstances should be taken seriously as a spokesman for anybody. He's a tyrant. He puts innocent people in jail. He's conducted genocides in his own country, ethnic cleansings. And for such a person to be representing...
But U.S. President Obama's reaction that Meles was committed to the poor, the problems of the poor.
This is shaka. This is what we feel sensitive about. Ethiopians now in the streets are begging for injera. They're going into places in hotels behind the scene.
The basic commodity.
No, even food to live.
But this didn't begin with the Meles?
Oh, no. Even now. Did you see the television interviews they made of people lined up behind Hilton?
Yes.
When? Yesterday only. They buying their food with $2 a drop.
The average annual income is only $1,000. That's about $3 a day. And Ethiopia remains heavily dependent on agriculture, which accounts for 85% of employment.
What have you done to your own people? He's supposed to be a champion of anti-terrorist partner to United States, and so he's a terrorist for us.
The government, of course, will argue that he built a lot of roads, schools.
The amount of money you dish out to him, if you were to give it to me, I'll make Ethiopia look like Paris. It's not an excuse.
I see.
And how much money has been doled out to him, throughout the 10 years alone is over 21 billion.
Well, as you know, the U.S. is the largest donor nation to Ethiopia. Between the U.S. and the European Union, I believe Ethiopia gets about $1 billion a year in foreign aid. That's enormous. It's the largest aid recipient in Africa. It's just amazing how much we contribute. I mean, it's true that Ethiopia is the second most populous nation in Africa, so it makes sense that we would give a lot of money. But we should make the money conditional upon Ethiopia meeting basic human rights standards. I have long believed that the United States would be far better off if it had a human rights-oriented foreign policy as opposed to a stability-oriented foreign policy. Instead of keeping dictators in power just because they happen to, serve our interests, we should be fighting for the rights of the people, for their human rights. The gross domestic product increased at what the World Bank considers an average rate of about 9% a year, which is very fast. I mean, it's like China's. Of course, I think actually a lot of that is exaggerated. The truth of the matter is that Ethiopia remains one of the poorest countries in the world. all you have to do is go there and sort of drive from some parts of Ethiopia to other parts, and you see that certain parts, you know, were favored over others, especially Tigray.
And if you deny the democratic rights to all other people to contest elections, to the press to mention what is happening in the country, you imprison a press individual for 15 years for life for saying the truth. What kind of system is he leading? It is a Gestapo system.
I commend the loser as well as the winner in Senegal, because they came to understand that after all, you cannot deny the people's voice. And I also commend the movement, the so-called the June movement, which says enough is enough. We have the same slogan now after 6 years in Ethiopia. We call it Baka. But the question now in Ethiopia is we are looking more like Mali now. You know why we are looking more like Mali now? In Ethiopia at this time, people are kicked out from their land and moved to Addis Ababa. There was no television camera, but VOA as well as German radio reported more than 20,000 people are now ethnically cleansed from southern part of Ethiopia, and they came to Addis Ababa. This is the saddest thing. At the same time, we have a movement, popular movement. People have to held their guns like Gambella, what we have in Gambella, to fight the land grab, what we have in Afar region, land grabbing, we have in Ogaden, we have back to in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. Ethiopian Muslims are saying no to the government involvement in their religious community. They have been staging huge rallies in their compound for the last 3 months. Ethiopian Christians as well, we say no when our land, our traditional historical land of the monastery in Gondar is now destroyed for the
5. When the election was seen to be lost for Legesse, he clamped down on all operation, declared an emergency, closed the counting of the election, and came out and said he won by what?
Yes.
99.6%. Now listen,
Yes.
after that, he imprisoned all the political party leaders, the most atrocious charges of treason to the country and so on. If you were to do here, if for instance, Mr. President Obama was to do that, and imprison all the leaders of the political parties, ban the newspapers from publishing anything, put them in jail, confiscate them, even close the human rights organization. What would you say? That's what happened in our country.
Let me ask you, Peter. Peter, you were there.
In principle, in a democratic country, in a pluralist democratic country which everybody ought to aspire, all our problems of starvation, all the shortcomings that we are mentioning could be solved if our country was democratized and actually everyone else is represented in the seat of government. Now the dictators, when they say a word of propaganda, all the media in the world carry out their news. They even come to threaten, like your organization, not to broadcast to Ethiopia. They blocked.
Voice of America.
Voice of America.
Never forget that Zenawi started out as the head of the Marxist-Leninist Tigrayan party under Mengistu, who was a communist. And I don't believe Zenawi really ever changed his stripes.
He's also faced criticism for civil and human rights abuses in recent years. Ethiopia is ranked 174th out of 187 countries in the United Nations Development Programme's 2011 Index, which measures life expectancy, education and living standards. Human rights groups have condemned a system in which political opposition and media have been stifled. Repression codified in 2009 by legislation that led to dozens of opposition figures being arrested and numerous journalists charged. Opposition members also accused Zenawi of rigging the 2005 election. In subsequent demonstrations, at least 200 people were killed by army and police forces, and leaders of the opposition group that successfully contested the election were sentenced to life imprisonment on treason charges.
I think you might say that the Legesse regime has been there by electoral consensus, insofar as in the 2010 elections they won with 99.6% of the vote. So you draw your own conclusions. I think it was Stalin who said it's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the votes.
And other governments around the world have got to constantly remind the new Ethiopian leaders that we expect this, that we will no longer put up with a 21-year dictatorship, you know, by one ethnic group in a country that has, well, hundreds of ethnic groups. It's just not right. This is a country that has a lot more potential than that.
Today, the body of Prime Minister Meles Zenawi arrived in Ethiopia from Brussels. No one's sure yet how he died, but, you know, that's part of the secrecy which shrouded his authoritarian rule. The story matters to America because Ethiopia's dictator was an ally in the fight against al-Qaeda in Somalia. Thanks to that allegiance, the U.S. looked the other way on things like how the Zenawi regime jailed opposition leaders and journalists and led Ethiopia to a ranking of 174 out of 187 countries in the Human Development Index. That measures human rights.
አሁን መለስ ዜናዊ የታየው በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ከቀብሩ ስነ ስርዓት ልንመለከት የቻልነው ከዛም በኋላ በሚደረገው ነገር ልገነዘብ የቻልኩት ከኢየሱስ ክርስቶስ ቀጥሎ ታላቁ ሰው በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ወይም ደግሞ ከፕሮፌት መሐመድ ቀጥሎ ታላቁ ሰው በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ መለስ ዜናዊ ተብሎ ነው። በጣም የሚያሳዝን ነው። በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ታላላቅ መሪዎች አልፈዋል፣ ግን መለስ ዜናዊ እዛ የሚገባ ሰው አይደለም። ግን ይሄንን በፕሮፓጋንዳ ሰውን አጥበውት ከኢየሱስ ክርስቶስ ከሃይማኖት መሪዎቻችን ከነ መሐመድ ፕሮፌት በታች አድርገው እሱን እንደ ታላቅ መሪ እንደ ታላቅ ሊመለክ የሚገባው ዘላዓለማዊ የሆነ ቅርስ የተወልን መሪ ነው ብሎ መናገር በጣም ራስን ይዘገናል። የኢትዮጵያ ሕዝብ መገንዘብ ያለበት የሚያዳምጠኝ ሰው ሁሉ መገንዘብ ያለበት በሁሉም መለኪያ ኢትዮጵያዊ ወሰዱን የኢትዮጵያን እድገት ይወሰዱ በማናቸውም በኢንተርናሽናል መለኪያ ብንወስደው ኢትዮጵያ አሁንም የመጨረሻ 10ኛ ደሃ ሀገር ነች። አለቀ። ይሄ ነው እውነቱ። ይሄ ነው እና ሁሉም ተመልከቱ። ሁሉንም በሁሉ አቅጣጫ በተባበሩት መንግስታት የሚያጠው ከኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ የሚወጣው መለኪያ በስተቀር ሌላውን መለኪያ ብንመለከተው በሁሉም በትምህርት በጤንነት በነጻነት በፖለቲካ እስረኛ በሁሉ ነገር የወሰደን እንደሆነ በልማት ብንወስድ ኢትዮጵያ ወደ ኋላ የመጨረሻው ነች። በምን መለኪያ እነሱ ይሄንን መለስ ዜናዊን የኢትዮጵያ ታላቅ መሪ ኢትዮጵያን ከዚህ ደረጃ ወደዚህ ደረጃ ያስተላለፈ ነው ብሎ መናገራቸው የሚያሳዝን ነው። ህዝቡ ራሱ ኑሮውን እየኖረ እኮ ነው። እያንዳንዱ ሰው ኑሮውን እየኖረ ነው። 98% የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ከ2% እነዚህ አዲስ አበባ ውስጥ ህንጻ ከሚሰሩ መንገድ ከሚሰሩ እና በዚህ በስርዓት ከከበሩት ሌላ የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ራሳችሁን ጠይቁ እስቲ ምንድነው ከመለስ ዜናዊ የተረፈን ድህነት ነውና ከ20 አመት ውስጥ አዲስ ለውጥ መጥቷል። ዋጋ ኑሯል፣ ዋጋ እጥረት አለ፣ ነጻነት ታፍኗል። ዛሬ በዓለም ውስጥ በቴክኖሎጂ ረገድ በአፍሪካ ውስጥ የመጨረሻው ደሃ ኢትዮጵያ ነች። በቴክኖሎጂ አክሰስ የተከለከለ አንዳንድ አፍሪካ ሀገር ይላል የመጨረሻ ደሃ የሚባሉ አፍሪካ ሀገሮች ነጻነታቸው በኢንተርኔት በሌላም ቴክኖሎጂ ነጻነታቸው ምንም የሚያግዳቸው ነገር የለም። በዚህ እፈና ብቻ አንደኛ ነች ኢትዮጵያ። በዚህ ሁሉ መለኪያ ስናው በምንድነው ከአቶ መለስ ዜናዊ ምንድነው ያተረፈው ብሎ ራሱን መጠየቅ ያስፈልጋል። መለኪያው ከኢትዮጵያ ለሚወጣው መለኪያው ከውጭ ነው ያለውና ይሄንን መገንዘብ በጣም አስፈላጊ ነገር ነው። ይሄንን ደግሞ ለኢትዮጵያ ማስተማር አለመቻላችን ማሳወቅ አለመቻላችን ድክመቱ የኮሙኒኬሽን ጉዳይ ነው። ድክመቱ እንደዚህ ያሉ ድርጅቶች ኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ተራ ህዝብ ጋር አልደረሱም። እና ዛሬ የሚደረገው ትግል የጥቂቶችን መብት ለመጠበቅ የሚደረግ ትግል ነው። ይሄ ነው።
We saw what an African police state looked like when I was in Ethiopia last month. At the airport, it took an hour to clear customs, not because of lines, but because of checks and questioning. Officials tried multiple times to take us to government cars so they'd know where we went, and they only relented after forcing us to leave hundreds of thousands of dollars of TV gear in the airport. Outside the airport, we saw, this is the outside of the airport, you see nothing. Inside was empty. Outside was a crowd. Why, we asked? Well, they said because we're not allowed in to greet our arriving families and friends. The police are worried about unrest, so the people stand outside in the rain. Another visual that ties some of this together is this photo. This is myself and our cameraman Christian next to a Lada. Those are the ancient Russian cars, which are still the taxi cab of choice in Addis Ababa, left over from when Ethiopia was a socialist ally of the USSR. Maybe that's why the United States is so proud of winning Ethiopia over as an ally. It's proof we won the Cold War.
ባለ ራዕይ እኮ ማለት እንደ ሰው ጥሩ ራዕይ ያለው ማለት የወደፊቱን በሚመለከት ከሌላውም በተሻለ የተሻለ ነገር ማየት የሚችልና ያንን የተሻለ ነገር በምን መልክ ተግባራዊ ሊሆን እንደሚችል መስመር መዘርጋትን እኮ ነው የሚጠይቀው አይደለም ለባለ ራዕይ ማለት እኔ እኮ መለስን አይደለም ስለ ወደፊቱ ጥሩ ነገር ሊያስብ የሚችል መሪ ሊሆን ቀርቶ በራሱ ዘመን እንኳን በራሱ ጊዜ እንኳን በዓለም ታሪክ በዓለም ሂደት መሆን ያለበትን ነገር ማድረግ ያቃተው ደካማ ሰው አድርጌ እኮ ነው ወስደው ይሄንን ምን ከልቤ ነው ለምን ነው ብለው ለኔ ታሪክንና በታሪክ ውስጥ ያለፉ መሪዎችን ማያቸው ከጊዜያቸው ጋር አጼ ሚኒሊክን ለምንድን ነው ምናደንቃቸው አጼ ሚኒሊክን ምናደንቃቸው ኮሎኒያሊዝም በጣም ትልቅ እንትን በነበረበትና አፍሪካን በሙሉ ባጥለቀለቀበት ጊዜ በዛ ጊዜያቸው ኢትዮጵያን በኮሎኒያሊዝም ስር እንዳትማቀቅ በጠመንጃም በመሳሪያም በዲፕሎማሲም የኢትዮጵያን ነጻነት ጠብቀው መቆየት በመቻላቸው ልዩ የሚያረጋቸው በጊዜያቸው ሌሎች ማድረግ ያቃታቸው በጊዜያቸው ማድረጋቸው ያ ነው አጼ ሚኒሊክን በጣም ትልቅ ሰው ያረጋቸው ከራሳቸው አልፎ የአፍሪካ እንትን የሚባሉት አፍሪካ በሙሉ በቅኝ ግዛት በሚገዛበት ጊዜ has the foresight የእውቀቱ ራእዩ ነበራቸው እነኚህን የአውሮፓ ትዕቢተኞችና ጥጋበኞች ማስቆም የሚችል ነገር ማድረግ መቻላቸውና እስከዛሬ ድረስ በነጻነት ኖርን ብለን እንድንኖር ማድረጋቸው አሁን አጼ ሚኒሊክን ለምን ዴሞክራሲያዊ ያልሆኑም ብለህ ብትጠይቅ የጅል ጥያቄ ነው because በአጼ ሚኒሊክ ጊዜ የኢትዮጵያ የነበረው ጥያቄ ያ አይደለም የኢትዮጵያ የነበረው የነጻነት ጥያቄ ነው ያን የነጻነት ጥያቄ ከሌላው አፍሪካ አገር በተለየ እሳቸው ያችን አገር ነጻ ማቆየታቸው ልዩ ወደ ያረጋቸው
But despite supporting a regime that deprived its nation of a free press, the United States isn't reaping the benefits you might expect. These guys are. These are Chinese businessmen in the airport. They are everywhere. China is the biggest investor in Ethiopia. That's right. They were everywhere. Here's the bottom line. The U.S. gives about $1 billion a year in aid to a dictator and looks the other way on human rights. And China gets the prize. That's kind of ugly, no matter how you look at it.
ቢሆኑ ጥሩ አይደለም ብቻ የጊዜው ጥያቄ አይደለም ከየት ያምጡት ሰው እኮ በጊዜው ነው መሆን የሚችል መንግስቱ ኃይለማርያም ሶሻሊዝም በገነነበት ጊዜ ከሶሻሊዝም ውጪ ምንም ውይይት በሌለበት ጊዜ ነው እንደ ወታደር መተው ምንድነው ሲያዩት ዓለሙ በሙሉ ሶሻሊዝም የሚልበት ነው ሶሻሊስት ነን አሉ ጊዜውን ለመምሰል ነው የሞከረው በዛ ጊዜ ለመምሰል ነው የሞከረው እና ሶሻሊስቶች እንደሚያረጉት ለማድረግ የሚችለውን ነገር ለማድረግ ሞከረ ያንን ለማድረግ ጨፈጨፈ ምን አለ ያንን በጊዜው መሆን እንኳን የሚችለው ነገር ባለመቻሉ ባለማድረጉ ነው የማይረባ ሰው ነው ራዕይ ያለው ለኢትዮጵያ በደም እንትን የሚያስብ መሪ አይደለም የምንለው ግን መለኪያው ኢቭን በመንግስቱ ጊዜ መለኪያው ዴሞክራሲ አይደለም ምክንያቱም በ66 እኔ በደም አስተዋውሳለሁ በ66 አብዮት ጊዜ ዴሞክራሲ ወዝኖ ትልቁ የውይይት እና የመንግስት ስርዓት ምን መሆን አለበት በሚለው ላይ ዶሚናንት የነበረውና ትልቅ እንደነበረው ይሄ ሶሻሊዝም የሚባለው እንትን ትክክለኛ ሶሻሊስት አይደለም በበቂ ሶሻሊስት አይደለም ነበር እኮ የነበረው ትግል እነመለስም እንትን ያደረጉት የገቡት ያፓም የታገለው ማይሶንም መለስ ሶሻሊዝም የሚባለው ስርዓት በአለም ላይ ፈርሶ ለመጀመሪያ ጊዜ ዴሞክራሲያዊ ስርዓት መፍጠር የዓለም የፖለቲካ አጀንዳ በሆነ ጊዜ ስልጣን ያዘ ሰው አይደለም ስለወደፊቱ ሌላ ነገር ሊያመጣ በዛ ጊዜ ዶሚናንት የነበረውን ያንን እውነተኛ የሰዎችን ነጻነት የሚያከብር የዴሞክራሲያዊ ስርዓት እንኳን ማስቀመጥ አቅቶት ልክ እንደ ሰሜን ኮሪያ ሁሉን ነገር ይዞ አፍኖ ለመግዛት የሞከረ በምንም አይነት ራዕይ አይደለም በጊዜው እንኳን መሆን ያለበትን መሆን ያልቻለ ደካማ ሰው አድርጌ ነው ማየው ሶ እኔ መለስን መለካው ሌላው ሰው ኦብቪየስ አድርጎ የተቀበለ ሉክ ሌላ አፍሪካ ሀገሮች ያኔ አጼ ምኒልክ እኛን ነፃነት በጠበቁ ጊዜ በኮሎኒያሊዝም ስር የነበሩ አገሮች ከኮሎኒያሊዝም ነፃ ወጥተው በዘጠናዎቹ ይሄንን የዲሞክራሲ እንትን ይዘው ዲሞክራሲያዊ ስርዓት ሆኖ ያው ጋና በዚህ ሰሞን ምርጫ አድርገው 3-4 ጊዜ በስርዓት ያለ ምንም ትርምስ አገራቸውን መጠበቅ ችለዋል መለስ እኮ እቺን ሀገር ዲሞክራሲ የውይይት የኮንቨርሴሽን መሰረት በነበረበት ጊዜ ዲሞክራሲ ከልክሎ አፍኖ እንደውም በዘር ላይ የተመሰረተ ፖለቲካ ፈጥሮ ማህበረሰቡን እርስ በርሱ ያባላስ ሆኖ ምኑ ነው ባለ ራእይ ምን
ያይናችሁ ቀለም አላማረኝምና ውጡ ካለ ኢትዮጵያ መንግስት መውጣት ነው ያለባቸው የጸጥታ ሌላ ጥያቄ ሳይነስ
እንዴት ነው እኩልነት የሚሆን አሁን የሚያሳዝነው መሰለ ቀደም ሲል እንዳሳየው ብሔር የሚለውን አቶ መለስ መለኪያ አድርገውታል አሁን እሳቸው ባወጡት መለኪያ ነው የምከራከረው እንጂ በኔ እይታ አይደለም እኔ በመጀመሪያ በዚህ አላምንም በሌላ በኩል አቶ መለስ
ባላመንክበት ነገር ለምትከራከራለህ
አባባሌ ይሄንንም ካሉ ይሄ ስርዓት በብሔረሰቦች ተዋጽኦ ነው በኩልነት ነው እየተመራ ያለው ካልክ ይሄ ኩልነትን አያሳይም የኔ መከራከሪያ ይሄ ነው እነሱ ባስቀመጡት ማለት ነው አንድን አገር እየመራህ ቀደም ሲል ካነሳው ለነጥብ አቶ መለስ በአደባባይ ወጥተው ሌላውን ህዝብ በማግለል እኔ ከወርቅ የተፈጠርኩ ከጨርቅ ባለ መሆኔ እንዴት ያንድ አገር መሪ እንዴት ይላል እንደውም በህዋት በአላ አንድ ጊዜ ሲናገሩ እንኳንም በሩቅ ያያዩዋቸው ይሄርኩ መሄድ አልሆነ እንኳንም ከናንተ ተፈጠርኩ ይሄን ስትል ሌላው ኢትዮጵያዊ እንዴት አርጎ አቶ መለስን የራሱ ሊያረጋቸው ይችላል ይሄኔ
እንኳን ህዝብ ዚስናይ ማትና አይኮነን እንኳን ሀብታትኩም ተፈጠርና እምነትናይ ነፍስ ወከፍ ተገደላይ ዋحد እዚ እንኳን ሀብታትኩም ተረፈና ቋና ማትና አይኮንኩ ቋማ አዲና ናራና ንቀለልኩም አይኮንኩ
እኔ ሌላ ምን ማለት